Hello, every folks, and good morning. So you know what? 99% of the time, this is the Tactics Ogre channel, but for those that have been around for a while, basically Armored Core and Tactics Ogre is what I've been covering here for the longest freaking time. And Armored Core 6 finally got announced.
Peggy
Go figure.
16.
Of all things, like, who exactly could have seen that coming? I mean, granted, okay, to some degree, it was partially expected, but still, like, it's been a running joke that Armored Core 6 is never coming for years at this point. And for anyone, look, for anyone that came to this channel that isn't aware of what Armored Core even is, it's like the thing is. Let me pause right here. If you've if you've seen any of the Dark Souls and stuff like that kind of games, you have to realize that FromSoft has kind of been experimenting with the same general idea for quite a while of just like, here's this completely annihilated world, here's a cool way for you to explore it, and then we're just gonna like dump lore absolutely everywhere, give you a million different interactions. Again, for folks that were here for the Tactics Ogre stuff, the same kind of stuff that I love being excited about for that. So, like, personally, third generation Armored Core is the one that really did it for me, but this particular one has me excited for a lot of reasons. So let's kind of go ahead and get into it here. So for a little bit of context here, if I'm not mistaken, this kind of looks like the very ending of Verdict Day. So there were a hell of a lot of AC games, Verdict Day being the latest one that came out, because these look like the towers over here. These little dealies over here, basically they had just like all these towers full of all this crazy technology and whatever else in Armored Core 5 and Verdict Day that was just basically one of many times that the Earth got completely annihilated. Now, these look very close together, so it might not be that. It might be another reboot, because the series just loves rebooting itself. Technically, I mean, I have a theory video from a long, long time ago now on how they could all theoretically be connected, just based off a bunch of like little lore tidbits and stuff like that. Now, as far as the whole name of it goes, this actually gives a little bit of an interesting implication. So normally they've done the same thing throughout the whole series, where they'll have a numbered entry, which, by the way, massive like 4th gen AC vibes right here. This looks exactly like the dome. But basically they've done this thing where they always would have a numbered entry, and then they would have a named entry that sort of smoothed over the roughness of that original one. And this is kind of telling, like, aside from the name and everything else, the way that they're suddenly breaking that convention for the very first time, as well as showing all this stuff getting scavenged here, really, really makes me think that this is probably going to be the one that ends up connecting later gen Armored Core with the like early gen ones. If I were to guess lore-wise, but this also tells me that this is probably going to be the last Armored Core game. Again, they've never broken this tradition, and the series has kind of had dwindling sales for a very long time. It's basically a pet project for them at this point. But basically, yeah, this looks like they're just putting together the pieces of this leftover world here. The legs this guy's running look like 5th gen legs, but the arms are, I mean, they kind of this kind of arm has been around for a good bit of the series here, so I can't say for 100% certain what's going on there. But that jump right there got me super excited for a number of reasons. For one thing, cluster bombs. Okay, first of all, quads seemingly coming in as the jumpy option, which would be really darn cool. It's good to see, quads being all good and nimble and not just the tank cannon guy again. For another thing, cluster bomb launchers off of an arm weapon seem pretty awesome. Looks like we got arm shields back, which, granted, they were a thing, but arm energy shields haven't really been much of a thing since 3rd gen, so that had me super excited, as well as just the overall look of this guy is very 3rd gen. So coming in here with his energy shield, this guy coming in here with his shotgun and his pile bunker, which, man. Okay, but also, okay, it looked kind of, for a second there, like, I don't know if we have a possible primal armor system in there still, which would be, again, very very 4th gen on that one. The pile bunker visually looks very 5th gen, but the way that it's kind of deployed here with the charge up and everything is very 3rd gen there. The super boss is coming out of the woodwork. Reminds me a lot of AC5. We got the classic, gotta have all your helicopters coming and dropping stuff intro. This might as well be 5th gen for its intro here. Like, this is every other scene in AC5. The mass-produced ACs/MTs, whatever here. Oh man, I just love so much about this. Right here, the way they have the oil dripping off the pile bunker there, the way that they just have everything all folding in. Like, I love these trailers. Pretty much back since Gen 1, AC's always been very good about the robot porn. And yeah, okay, so what else can we see on this guy? Let's see. It looks like, I'm assuming that kind of looks like a slug gun or something on the right shoulder, left side. I'm assuming it's probably that cluster gun that we saw earlier. Maybe some rockets or something. I'm not sure, but it does look like we got the 5th gen 4-weapon system here, because they end up pulling this stuff out. The folding armor on the head. Now, this was something that got very misunderstood when 5th gen was a thing, because we kept assuming that there was going to be this transforming armor, and when they did interviews for it, they're like, oh, here's all these transforming systems and whatever else, and basically what they meant was, hey, if you use the right kind of legs with a sniper cannon, they'll deploy their forward leg shield to give you some protection from the front, and if we look at... if you put on scan mode, it puts your AC out of combat mode kind of thing. And then also if you use a overweapon, it blows your arm off sometimes. But in this particular case, it looks like I can't tell if this is just... Like, this looks like a scanning shield or something. Like, it's got a little extra sensors on there. For those unaware of the series, the pilot's never in the head. The head is just a sensor thing, basically. So if they're putting a little scanner on there, that's probably for the purpose of actually scanning, not necessarily anything else. But the way that they have it all like coming down and everything else is very the Armored Core 4 answer on that one. But yeah, the way that they're skipping AC6 straight into Fires of Rubicon here makes me think that, yeah, this is 100% going to be probably the last Armored Core game. Like, they probably were like, okay, look, we just want to take the best of every generation and just kind of make one more. Like, come on, it's been so long. Can we please make another one? Now, look, there have been little hints about this for a while now. There have been little, bits and pieces to chew on here and there. And by the way, as far as it coming out on basically everything, I love that it's coming out on PS4. Probably getting it on PS4 just to be able to still play it on the Vita. But, coming out on Steam for the first time too, so go figure. Alright, so let's take some time here to just quickly appreciate how absolutely incredible this series is. Why it's so dang awesome. So here's the thing. I may describe it as kind of sort of Souls-like-esque, but basically what I'm actually saying is that this game is quintessentially a FromSoft experience. Namely, there's details in everything. Every little piece of everything has some sort of mechanic behind it. And everything is unnecessarily, good at being, customizable. Like, hey, you just want to draw your own emblem with a friggin' built-in friggin' paint program? Sure, why not? Just go ahead and do that. Slap it on there. Like, remake your build with whatever the hell you want. Whatever. What kind of sample colors do we have here? You want to just make it blue? Sure, my son would appreciate that. Let's go ahead and make it kind of bluish. Good enough. You know what? Maybe you want some. Maybe you want to go ahead and throw some camo on there. Yeah, let's go ahead and make that happen. Actually, wait. Actually, that's pretty cool right there. Whatever. We're gonna leave it as that one. The standard front mission kind of colors going on over there. But again, it all goes deeper. Like, think of any Souls game, whatever else. Every single individual piece having all these bits and pieces to it, and all of these matter in some way. Is anything consistent? No. Just like every other FromSoft game, every single entry is just its own happy little sandbox, making certain things work in some ways. Like the overall archetypes will be the same, the overall themes will be the same, but you'll just see them having fun with the mechanics all the time. But what is consistent? What is consistent is you yourself being a complete piece of shit throughout the entire series. Like right here, somebody is having a strike. Well, naturally, the first answer to potentially deal with a strike, because we can't be dealing with things like wages in this universe. Have you seen how much these robot parts cost? We have to do everything with frickin' robots. How are you questioning this? Well, I mean, obviously, there's a riot, you shoot it. That's just how things are going to work here. With laser swords and machine guns, because of course, how else would you possibly handle this situation? You wouldn't, frankly. You wouldn't. It's just not how it's done. Now, when I say that this is a quintessentially FromSoft experience, obviously this also translates to the fact that there will be hidden parts and things in missions. Like every one of these places that you go to, sure, they're their own little set pieces and things like that, but every one of them will have certain mechanics going on as well. Wait, I forget if there's a hidden part here. Somewhere here, there's a hidden part. I don't remember. Maybe that's the one they added in Nexus. I'm not sure. You actually had a bunch of like self-remake missions later on down the line here. Now, am I saying that all the mechanics are perfect or whatever else? No, absolutely not.
Target achieved.
In many ways, these games have been super janky from the very start, and it's wonderful. It's the good kind of jank. It's the jank that feels amazing. You know why? You know why the hell it's jank? Because a lot of this stuff evolved, like even engine-wise, out of the Kingsfield games. In fact, if you go to something like Shadow Tower, which is sort of like a Kingsfield type situation, you'll notice that you can straight up get the grenade launcher from this game in that one. So it's just funny how connected all this stuff was, because this, again, was just a fun experiment for them. Anyway, so just like any FromSoft game or whatever else, every one of these characters will essentially be part of the world. If they die, they won't be there anymore. Like if you encounter one of these guys in a mission and you kill them off, if they're an actual person, hint, hint, then they will not be back. And this is just the top 10. There's actually plenty of these available. In fact, let's go ahead and go over to my favorite one of the series just to kind of deep dive into how crazy it gets. Okay, so welcome to Armored Core 3. Man, I cannot possibly tell you how much I friggin' love this game. Okay, this is I may have Tactics Ogre as my favorite game of all time, but AC3 is right there, right behind it. Like, I have played this game to absolute death, and it's for exactly the same reason as the Ogre series. The Armored Core series, or Ogre series, both of them had that same thing of just an appreciation to detail that you never get to see. Like, again, just the sheer interaction with the world is truly something else. Like, okay, every one of these characters right here, like, you know how you have your Soulsborne games and every single one of the NPCs you run into feels like they have a story behind them? Oh yeah, no, every single one of these like literally has a story behind them. Their whole deal, like, they've got a backstory for every single rando that you run into over the course of the whole story. If anything happens to any of them, they'll end up getting killed off in the story. Like, for example, many of these guys, like right here, like Spartan, shows up as an MT pilot. They're these like jobber robots that are pretty much around everywhere, and the Armored Core is basically like the elite robots, more or less. And these guys will show up getting promoted if they manage to survive through the story. Some of them will end up switching sides. Some of them will end up doing different things. Like, I love stuff like, for example, this guy. He's just a tech reviewer that happens to pilot around a giant mech because he's got all these cool things that have just been coming out, and he just wants to try all the new, latest, cutting-edge stuff, even if it's not very good. Or you got Dux over here, who's just a cheap bastard, so he refuses to use any shell weapons so that he can entirely recharge his AC and not have any ammo costs. You've got these two right here, Paranoia and Paradox, that are just two dancers that have ACs that complement each other's things in order to use lasers to make a rave in the middle of the fight. Like, it's just so good. They have so much of this stuff. This guy, you may have seen if you've watched the Ogre runs. I've been having this guy around as a character for the longest time because he's literally just a dude that shows up, sells his only secondary weapon, and he's like, whatever, I guess I'll just get slightly different legs, and that's just all he does. And his entire thing is just, well, he's learning harsh lessons, he's not very good, but you know what, people are happy with his willingness to try. There's this kinds of stuff absolutely everywhere, and it's amazing. Like, you got this dude right here, how they point out that, this guy has a far deeper understanding than he's willing to show anybody. He's only here. Like, there's a archetype that shows up in every one of these games that's just the gatekeeper. Like in AC2, you had the Werehound. In this one, you've got Fixer. But basically, they're just a dude that's always there. Is just like, you can tell that they'd be able to go far more if given the chance, but they're not going to. because they like picking on the rookies and, you know, just hazing people instead. And so this kind of stuff is very ever-present. And by the way, I realize that this AC that I built here isn't exactly a perfect analog for the one from that intro, but it's enough to show off what was at least available there for the most part. Actually, some of the parts to make this a proper rebuild aren't available in this one. Like, for example, we've got these scatter mines right here that are very similar to the kinds of stuff that he was using in that one. We've got the pile bunker right here, which was just the parry blade in this one because that was a parry mechanic. But I just want to point out, in terms of the level of detail that they go through to make people appreciate the weirdness going on here, you may notice that gigantic yellow spiky thing on his arm is basically it's the moonlight. If you played a Souls game, yes, that moonlight. There's the moonlight in every one of these games, and it's always the best sword. And, I mean, granted, because of the fact that there's energy costs in this one, you know, best is arguable. But, anyway, point being that he's just got a thing that could potentially just wipe out any newbie, whatever else, but he just chooses to fight instead. But if you end up rushing him down hard enough, he will end up switching over and end up using the thing out of desperation. And it's just, the level of detail that shows up to all of these things is absolutely wonderful. I mean, actually, part of the reason that I brought this shield here is sometimes he'll attempt to show off the parry mechanic. Like, does he want to right now? Because we're doing, I mean, I guess technically we've got lower health than he does, so he might not be willing to do it. But anyway, if basically if you're winning the fight, he's more willing to use his blade here, and there's a few cases where that happens. Come on, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? Come on. Come on, you know you want to do it. Show me the parry mechanic. Show me that parry mechanic. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. You dick. Alright, fine. I guess we'll just stab you then. By the way, oh, well, anyway, whatever. He just ended up blowing up because he was overheating the whole time. This is what I mean about mechanics, by the way. If you've played like a Soulsborne game and you know how you got the poison mechanic, imagine if every single weapon had that, but it was just internal heat instead. Anyways, so like every single unit will have something like this, and you can basically betray anybody through any of these stories. Like, to my mind, a lot of this feels very similar to something like what's it, like Demon Souls there, because basically you have all these different areas and you repeatedly go back to these different areas in order to try and, you know, do whatever the hell your mission happens to be in that given time. And there's usually a lot more nuance to it than it seems. Like, there's a lot of cases where you've got branches in the story that it'll never bother telling you about. But all of these missions have little tiny variations on them all over the place. You've got a lot of funny in-jokes and everything else. Like, if you were wondering about Trusty Patches from the Souls games, he was also in Armored Core. He's definitely a Miyazaki thing, but, like, he actually first showed up in, or not, actually, was he technically first? I forget if Demon Souls or For Answer came first, but Trusty Patches was also an AC pilot, who basically would just bail halfway through the fight. Like, literally, the normal mode mission of it was just you show up and he just leaves. He's like, yeah, no, I'm out, bye. I don't want any part of this. And he just goes and bails on his partner there, and then in hard mode he sticks around, but he begs to survive. Anyway, so yeah, it's just, there's a lot of these little nuances, as it were. You might have noticed earlier what I was mentioning about ammo costs. So basically, whenever you're going through any of these missions, it's not just choices that you're making directly, whatever else. You basically have to be paying for every bullet that you fire, because at the end, this entire world is ridiculously corporate, to the point that even who lives or dies just comes down to a friggin' balance sheet kind of situation. In this particular case, these guys are squatting in an area that a sentient supercomputer has just decided they can't squat in. So, no questions asked. We're just kind of here to just grenade launcher everybody, as you do, Now, I will say, my personal favorite ones have been the PSP ones. That really, if you're looking to just get into these, the PSP ports are really solid. Like, it's one of those rare cases where actually all of the content, except for one absurdly, oddly specific thing, made it over. But I love the fact that, like, for example, you've got bosses like this guy. The lore implications are hilarious, because the faction that this guy is representing here, he's so friggin' broke at this point that this is the only guy they could afford to hire, okay? his spreadsheet, or sorry, his whole story on his arena profile makes it sound like he's this amazing tactician, whatever else. And then you realize all of it is just a crappy sales pitch. Like, they're like, oh, he's got all these weapons for a variety of situations, and he can adapt to anything. And then you actually fight the guy, and he's like, he's just got no clue what the hell he's doing. And you could chalk this up to bad AI, but they use bad AI on purpose as a storytelling thing a lot in this series. Like, this is one of the few cases of a boss that you can literally just walk away, and he will eventually self-destruct. Because he'll eventually use these mines. He's got the same mines that I've got right here, and just end up placing them on enough walls that he just blows himself up. It's, yeah, it's something else. And it's funny because you end up working for his faction later, because they just end up paying you the money at that point, because they're cheap at this point. This is all they could afford. This is all they could afford to have here. And it's just this guy, like this friggin' guy that can't even really do anything. He's got a lightweight that's trying to fight like a heavyweight, more or less. It's so dang good. Like, FromSoft has always done this. Later on, they got a little bit iffy with like in the Souls games and things like that about making the AI not necessarily follow the rules. They actually did that for a couple of the AC games as well. But really, to my mind, From games have always been at their best when they're these kinds of situations. When it's just somebody that's directly following the rules and their build tells the whole story, you know? Like the fact that this guy is just a complete friggin' loser, but he's all that they could afford. Then later on, when you end up taking his place, you end up seeing, like, yeah, their leadership absolutely sucks. Every time they send you on a mission, it ends up going haywire, with maybe one exception. And you kind of get the idea of, like, yeah, they might be the good guys, but they're complete dipshits. And you see that just all the time. It's great. But yeah, details on details on details on details. And again, it's just another quintessential just FromSoft experience. To see all of these characters doing different things. Like, imagine this moment right here, okay? This was one of those moments that just blew my mind as a kid, okay? This guy is an exceptionally tough arena fight. Like, you get more arena fights as you rank up by doing missions and, you know, you're promoted through the ranks and all that. But then you run into this guy, and this was one of those cases where they had a second gatekeeper, the guy that can clearly be the top of the arena if he wanted to, but he's just kind of chilling and relaxing and all that kind of thing. Now, let me show you, compared to those other two that I was showing off earlier, let's go ahead and compare with this guy, just to show you how friggin' oppressive and strong this guy is, and because I want to show you one of the moments that really just blew my mind here when I was a kid there. So immediately, like, all you see in the distance is just these floods of missiles coming out, half your friggin' health gone. So if you're a lightweight and you didn't react to that on time, you are, you know, a tad fucked. But yeah, you're overheating, your health is melting, and then he comes in with the, like, friggin' spread howitzer and shotgun, and you're like, oh crap. But then, you know, you've built for good solid shell defense, and then suddenly he comes in with the high damage exceed orbits, and it's like, oh great, this guy shreds every defense type universally. He's melting you from the inside, he's melting you from shell, he's melting you from energy. Beautiful. Now, imagine this moment, okay? You're going through all this stuff, and you've fought several bosses at this point. You've fought gigantic spiders. You've gone through, you know, giant, like, bioweapon nests and whatever else. You've been ambushed. You've fought like a friggin' sea monster that's basically just not even a monster. It's, what the hell do you even call that thing? It's just a gigantic death lobster. And okay, if I can remember where the hell it is. I think it was in the nature area here, okay? Have this moment.
Our long-range scanners have acquired a massive target moving through Sector 720. Given its current heading, we believe that a nearby energy reactor is in imminent danger.
You've just saved that reactor, by the way. Hang on,
Our long-range unleashing something of this magnitude can only be the work of the controller. Whatever its intentions, the situation looks grim.
The controller is the supercomputer just running everything, by the way.
Regardless, we can't just give in. Destroy the target at all costs.
So you don't even know what it is, right? You don't know what it is. You know that a bunch of stuff has been sent to kill off that reactor they're talking about. And then you go over here and they're like, oh, here's all the people that you can hire. It's like, oh, this guy is a promoted MT. You know, we've been there on some missions together. Oh, she was an MT too. We've been on some missions together. This is the guy that was here in the intro. Oh, man, the gang's all here. They're all coming in. Oh, hey, I saved this guy back in Rugland Lab. Or he might be dead and not show up here. Like, oh, and then you got Regina here. You know, she's another one that can get killed off in the background. Oh, shit. It's about to get real. It's like, for all of your money, you get the grand champion. Would you like to consider how difficult this is going to be? Kind of a situation. Like, these moments, they're so good at making these moments throughout this series.
That's the target.
Now, again, AC3 is my personal favorite, but that's not to say that it's, you know, unquestionably the best one or whatever else. Everyone's got their favorite because every one of these games has just been designed as a sandbox, more or less. Basically, every one of them is experimenting with some fun new mechanics. Hell, there's one of them that doesn't even, well, it technically does, but you're not really intended to even fly an AC in that one. You're just intended to make a, like a series of commands for the thing to follow, right? And, man, by the way, if those the pursuit missiles look familiar to any Soulsborne fans, you can use that weapon too. Yeah, it started here. Basically, a lot of the stuff that you've seen in the Soulsborne games started here. Which, by the way, Soulsborne games, why do you have the ability to purge your weapons? You can put them away, but you can't purge them. Not that that's really a feature that it needs, but I'm just saying, it's kind of cool. It's like this guy's just firing missiles everywhere. If you get close, he'll just fire multiple nukes at you, which they're not really nukes, but everyone just kind of generally refers to them as nukes. The large missiles. Probably don't want to be using dispenser mines for this. Oh, well, completely flubbed that. Because I'm accidentally hitting the wrong button here. Let's see if we can... I don't know. Oh, that's why. For a second there, I was like, why the hell is my parry blade not firing? Because it's got a pretty decent range on it. I'm like, oh, great. I'm using the grenade launcher instead. You can't use that unless you're on the ground. Which there's another little good attention to detail moment that if you're on a biped, you have to kneel down to fire it. But then if you're on a quad, you can just walk and fire it. But if you're a tank, you can fly and fire it. So it's just a fun little mix of just enough balance to make it all feel like it clicks, you know? And again, it's not perfectly balanced by any means. The secondary rifle that you can pick up right at the very start is, well, I literally heard my friend calling it some absolute bullshit the other day. But like for example, the heat gun is this thing is just generally considered pretty broken because it's just really high heat generation on a rapid fire gun. They've got something like this with the special lockbox rifle. There's a bunch of like little quirks here and there that are just really, really fun. Actually, speaking of the whole kneeling thing, this always kind of cracked me up as far as when I'm going through this menu here. There's one here that I swear must have been one of the developer's ex-girlfriend or something like that. Because you get Yellowbow right here. So, an optimist, your combat strategy incorporates very little in the way of proven tactics and she relies almost solely on luck to best the competition. Her AC is designed for looks and the random part layout makes it hard to anticipate her moves. Now, let me go ahead and show you what that actually means. Speaking of kneeling down. Because this one just always cracks me up because you can tell by what they mean by random parts and what, like, as far as the fun implications in the background, again, of every one of these characters that just lets you know they're always having fun. By the way, in terms of funny mechanics, try to put adhesive mines on the water, they can't stick. Anyway, so, like right here, you may notice she's not moving anywhere because she's kneeled down to fire the cannon because she's not cheating. Most of the pilots in this one will go ahead and follow the rules, in which they have to kneel down if they're on a biped. Her build makes absolutely no sense, but you know she'll go ahead and make the best use of that as she can. But it's just always kind of cracked me up of like, oh, why exactly is she one of the only ones that'll bother trying to use a cannon that requires them to kneel down? It's like they specifically have the wrong leg type for it, just kind of for the hell of it. There we go. It's just a funny mechanic. It's even more funny because, yeah, I love how I've done rocket-only runs of practically the entire series, and I still just have those moments where I can't hit anything with them. I literally had a bit in Last Raven where I was going and sniping tiny little things out of the night sky, but apparently I can't hit this gigantic target right in front of me. Beautiful. I don't know, maybe it's a whole talking and everything else thing at the same time. Oh man. Which, by the way, I realized that the AC6 AC looked like it had a slug gun on the back, but the lightweight slug gun doesn't exist in this one, and so it was, like, no matter what way you slice it, it was stupidly overweight. So there's that. Which, actually, another funny part about her AC right here, she's actually overweight. She's one of the only ones that's in the arena that's just completely overweight. Again, strange joke. I don't know what the deal is behind all of that, but it was just a very random setup right there. Funnily enough, when I actually remade a lot of these guys for the, I made, like, that game I was talking about, the way you rebuild everything as AIs, I remade most of the notable characters from this whole series, and she actually did surprisingly well. And actually, even more surprising, this guy I was making fun of earlier, this Adu guy, he was in the top frickin' 10 somehow. He's got nothing going for him. Just stuff kept going wrong with everybody else. Like, one time, literally, one of them just managed to hit everything around him and not him. It was glorious. But yeah, actually, no, in terms of other fun times when they just literally made a bad AC just as a joke. Like, look at this guy. Their description says that they're a race car driver that just can't stop. They just cannot help themselves but go fast. And look at this dude! All he does is overboost around the arena the whole time, to the point where, if you want, here we can just go ahead and do this. Just go ahead and flutter our way to the top. Notice his health on the top right. We have not fired a single shot. He will gladly overheat himself to death in order to go fast. It's great. It's great. Like, basically this game is, for all intents and purposes, an RPG without any leveling or whatever else, okay? You basically can just swap out to any part of the RPG whenever you'd like. You find new parts, they unlock new things for you, you can do new stuff. But you can basically fly right from the get-go, you can do whatever the hell builds you want right from the get-go, and you get more little options to play with as time goes along, and you can customize yourself as you see fit. But, you know, in the end, you're still doing a lot of the same old stuff that you would have done in a Soulsborne or something like that. Like, let's go ahead and switch over to some other legs here. Like, let's say we're in a map that's got a lot of water, right? So, stands to reason, if we fall into that water, we're not coming out so good. So we're just going to go ahead and put on something like this, and let's say we want to go ahead and customize our internals a little bit. So basically, you know how you had ring slots in your Soulsborne games? You have optional part slots that are based off of your core's capacity. In the 3rd gen games here, this changed into tuning later, but still, there's a whole bunch of, like, little bits and pieces you can tweak all over as you do. Anyway. So, let's go ahead and swap out for, I don't know, like a shoddy or something. Let's go ahead and swap out some of these for, oh, I don't know, maybe some of those pursuit missiles from earlier, because those were pretty fun, and I just want to show those off again. How the hell overweight are we right now? Extremely. Okay, beautiful. Just like I like it. Actually, let's switch out for the lightweight shoddy. Let's go ahead and replace this thing. Do we want to do starter blade? Let's just do no blade whatsoever. And let's go ahead and switch this out for something like this. Let's see, 890. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and go for the Orca, just to have some backup ammo, just in case. Go for the, probably not the Zeos, but probably something like this for a bit more weight here. And let's switch out for a lighter, actually, we're almost completely lightweight as far as all that goes. Probably get rid of those internal nonsenses. And let's go over to nature area right here, and let's go to defend water processors. And just to kind of show you, like, hey, like, you're going to be over the water. Maybe you just hire some fighter jets to help you deal with the situation. Sure, you can go in without it, but again, it's all a money decision. In the end, even your rating on every one of these missions is based on how much you managed to save and how much money you made. So it's just a good time. It's a very genuine experience. Like, it's a very bleak world, but if I can say one thing about Armored Core, it's just always been a very genuine experience. It's here. Let's go ahead and show you what I mean about these. Again, it even functions the same way as when it comes back for all the Soulsborne games and things like that. Oh wait, those are my fighter jets. What am I doing? I just ended up almost shooting down one of my own jets. But yeah, again, a lot of the stuff started here. Even the parry mechanic, believe it or not. Even the parry mechanic, oddly enough, started here. Wherein if you have a blade hit coming onto an energy shield, it puts them into a little bit of a stun state.
This is Megalo. Commencing my attack.
Also, I love how she pronounces his name wrong, and then he's almost correcting it in a sassy manner. Like, right here, this is one of those cases where there's just a guy that happens to be here. You don't have to kill him, but you can. And if you do, he's not in the arena anymore. I mean, we're in the post-game now, so he's gonna, he's gonna show up. But if you kill him off, then suddenly his spot in the arena gets taken by somebody else. And so suddenly you have a new arena opponent that might be a bit of an easier time for you to deal with. And they love doing this. It's a perfect integration of all these different mechanics that honestly would just be throwaway stuff in a lot of other cases. Again, it's just a very FromSoft experience where they just... Sure, it has some technical shortcomings. It controls kind of janky, but because, again, you're playing this more as an RPG than an actual, like, action game. That's the thing. You can make a build that makes it function more like an action game, and you can challenge run this thing like an action game. But there's a reason that the standard experience for most people is essentially going to be, going through the thing and just curb stomping everything, because, again, it is more RPG than anything at the very start there. I mean, most folks will end up with something that's just like pure DPS and damage, and then they'll end up coming back and they're like, well, missiles are pretty fun. Or, maybe some weird mechanics are pretty fun. Like, hey, I can make this guy look like he has 2 guns. That's fun. And then you just keep going back with these weirder and weirder builds, and it's just amusing, You just keep doing this stuff. Like, what this thing was originally named here, the Blenderizer, was a challenge that I was doing of just doing all the missions with random parts in a random order. And it was a dang good time. It was a real fun time. Okay, let's go ahead and show you one more thing. Right here, just so you know, this one's going to be Last Raven. It's the one with by far the worst music in the series, and some of the more contentious decisions, but the intro, okay? The intro that they were showing for AC6 reminded me so much of this right here, where they were just showing off all these little bits and pieces where it's like, you can tell that they just kind of want it to be a swan song of sorts, and that's what Last Raven was here. This was basically a close to the series before they realized, wait, this would be really cool on the PS3, actually. Like, I'm pretty sure that AC was supposed to be dead at Last Raven, and then that's when, when probably Sony approached them or something, and they're like, hey, every one of our consoles has launched with a FromSoft game, so, would you like to, I don't know, make a bit more robot porn for us? Because we're kind of craving that right now. And, then AC4 happened, and that was the worst translation I've ever freaking seen. And then 4 Answer happened, and that was some of the coolest set pieces I've ever freaking seen. But anyway, so then we get to Last Raven. So this is what I mean about every one of these games is similar, but different, okay? So, like, we have the same thing here where you're spending a lot of your time building and whatever else, but you can tell the tone is very different. Like, for example, back with 3, there's a grim tone, but they were having a lot of fun. It was a very... I don't know, it was like a very Tarantino-esque experience, where it's very genuine and it's very, both gritty and hilarious at the same time, right? And then you had Silo Line that came after it. It was basically the same thing, but taken up to 11 as if the entire staff had just gotten drunk and just kind of threw whatever and just remaking AC3 in a fun way. And yeah, it was a dang good time. And then they experimented with like, what happens if we just allow people to shoot each other's guns off? And yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's not balanced by any means. Honestly, all these games are poorly balanced, seemingly on purpose. But then, people were saying, hey, we want more simulation, and we want more gritty stuff, and so they did one that was called Nexus, in which they experimented with, a grittier story, in which the world is ending again. But a lot of the ways that you went through the story were kind of going for more of that roguelike Iron Man feel, like the story would even play out differently if you failed missions. And so that that was pretty cool. There were specific branches you could only access if you failed at certain times, including, funnily enough, a non-canon thing where you kill off one of the main characters of this game. But anyway, like, all branches led to the same place, but the journey to there was a bit different each time. And all these games have had branching storylines, but it always ends in the same spot. It's handled in a very comfortable way. They took that whole Nexus thing of branching storylines and then just decided, what if we just got really weird with this? What if we specifically tried to make it so that like every single one of these things ends in a completely different outcome, right? And for better or worse, that is exactly what happened. But again, for better or worse. And okay, this is going to seem like a really weird jump, but to explain the one thing that the PSP remakes actually changed, that they actually removed, they only changed two things. Okay, the very first one is the fact that there used to be grid lines when, like, for example, let's go into an AC test. There used to be grid lines that showed up on your weapon selection thing, which is it just wouldn't look right on a PSP. So yeah, naturally they just made that a solid line instead. And then the other thing was this right here, which was first person mode. Now, is this necessary by any means? Absolutely not. They brought it back in this one, but Silent Line is the one that had it originally, and it didn't this time around, and it had all of this cool, like, UI stuff too and whatever else. And actually, I can probably show that. I should just hook up my PS2. So, by the way, for a little bit of context, this is basically what changed is back in Silent Line here, and literally only Silent Line. This goes back to that same thing of just always trying different mechanics in every one of these entries. You could switch over to this cockpit view, which was really cool when there was a guy a little while ago that actually made a like full-blown friggin' 3D cockpit and everything else out of all of this. Yeah, go figure that somebody with the the funds and wherewithal to do all this stuff actually did something like that, for this of all games. It's just really something else. But yeah, every one of them has had different arenas. Every one of them has had kinds of different stuff going on. What I find funny is they technically added some new stuff up in the PSP version. Like the Space Dome is only available in multiplayer on this one, or in the PS2 version, whereas it's available in single player in the PS2 in the PS2 version it was multiplayer only, and the PSP version it's available in single player. Technically there's still multiplayer, but it's one of these cases where it's a bit difficult to get set up. That said, we have had that kind of thing happen before, though. But you can see here what I was saying about the about those old grid lines showing up. So you can see there's a bit more detail in the PS2 version to some degree. It looks a little bit chunkier, and this is just generally a pretty cool setup. But yeah, the PSP version is just so much easier to deal with. Technically, there's like slightly better frame rate, but if you're playing on a Vita, it's pretty comparable, all things considered. And if the sound is a little bit off, by the way, it's simply just the way that I have this all set up. My PS2 setup is not particularly ideal. But yeah, this kind of stuff is just it feels so good. I love this viewpoint. Again, only get it in Last Raven for the PSP versions, but this is really nauseating to play after a little while, especially if you're playing with a small lockbox, because basically your internal computer system determines how you actually lock onto things and whatever else. Which, like, I should be, like, airblading this guy instead of, if you airblade somebody, you go and you kind of home in a little bit, like that. But, anyway, the point being, details. So, that will be that. Moving on to the original point that I was trying to make here. Let me just show this real quick, by the way, as far as the parry mechanic goes, because I just love that it was in here originally. Are you going to do it? There we go. See, like, he gets a little bit of a stun on there, and then right there I can just go punch his head off. Like, this one was way more gritty and whatever else. Like, you could punch limbs off, you could blow limbs off, but it was, by many accounts, a bit bullshit in terms of difficulty, because they threw away the whole thing of all the ACs following the same rules. Like, they technically did. But to give you an idea, right? Let's go ahead and compare this. Like, you saw a boss fight earlier, right? You saw a boss fight, and you saw one of the harder arena fights in the earlier ones. And again, it was sort of a Dark Souls thing, where your first time around it's pretty difficult, but then you come back and, it's a bit of a breeze. Now let me show you one of the 3 starter missions that you can do in this one. This one's a bit notorious, by the way, but just to give you an idea of the tone that they were trying to set here. So bear in mind, you would come in here with basically nothing in most cases. I'm just going to do first person because the cramped environments of this game definitely look better in first person in my opinion. I like playing Last Raven in first person. That's probably why they included this mode, but you can only access this mode after 100%ing the game, so there's that. Anyway, so there we go. You notice that little stun there? That was one of those annoying things that they added in this one, because enemies can self-destruct, which is especially funny because you can actually be a bit rude during certain fights that if you get blown up, you can actually just charge at the other guy and self-destruct in their face. Which, yeah, you still lose, but, you know, you kind of feel a little bit better about it. Anyway, so, you know, right here they're saying to recon this area, and you can just kind of walk through it. This doesn't seem so bad so far. I mean, it's kind of whatever, right? And just a quick little jaunt through, a couple enemies, whatever. We've gone and recon the thing.
What took you so long?
Oh, what's this? We have a boss fight just immediately.
My orders are to kill you.
Yeah, apparently they are. How about that? So,
He's attacking. Take him out.
you may notice he's using a lot of lasers and he's flying around a lot.
I thought you were better than this.
And we've already lost half our health because that cannon of his can actually rip off one of your limbs with a single shot. Yeah, that would have been a lucky thing if that hit. These pile bunker / parry blades, nobody uses them for a reason. If you're ever looking at these games and wondering why, they have a 3-second kind of startup here. And if I was using one of the other ones, that probably would have been a hit right here. This is literally just a Hail Mary, because this AC has no realistic chance of actually beating this guy. By the way, the pursuits that you've seen in Souls and whatever else originally started as orbit cannons back in these games right here. I guess this is technically not entirely impossible, because actually you've got a pretty decent energy supply in this thing, so I could probably keep the shield up. Which is, yeah, no, it's only blocking some of the hits. So it went ahead and blew up. That didn't go terribly well, but you can imagine. I mean, I have a general idea of what exactly it is that kills these things, and it pretty much got creamed immediately. Now, imagine if you've just, you know, run into this for the very first time. That might give you a little bit of a feeling as to why this one didn't review particularly well. But it is a very, very fun game to play around with all the same, even if it is designed really weird. But again, this was supposed to be like a swan song for the series and whatever else. But just like all the other ones, you know, you go back, any story characters that you find, you have in this extra arena right here, any of your, and then you've got a bunch of fun guys that are over here, and it's especially fun because a lot of these are just basically stuff from the intros of these various games. They were a bit of an in-joke. Like this guy was, what the hell was this guy from? I forget. I want to say that this was one of the ones that was, one of these guys was an impossible one from Project Phantasma, and then you had this guy that, or not this guy. Where the hell was he? Yeah, this one that was the Silent Lion intro. You had this one that's the AC2 intro. Or no, this one's the AC2 intro. This one is just Evangel from the last game. He's one of the main characters. Yeah, this one that's the AC1 intro. You have this one that's... Actually, no, that one's the AC2 intro. What the hell is... What are you again? Where is he? Where's the one guy? You. This is basically the Master of Arena intro. Again, you might notice all of these look very similar with slight adjustments of big gun, cannon, and missile, because they all were basically different variants of the same thing. Like, technically, Zoro X, this guy, is supposed to be Leos Klein, who you fight in AC2, who is basically like this guy, but slightly different. Anyway, so you got this guy that's the Another Age intro, and then you got this one that's the AC3 intro. You got this one that I believe is also from Another Age. I think that's the lightweight that shows up in that one. You got this one that's the intro to this game. You got this guy that's basically the mascot for the series. And you got this guy who's total bullshit. But anyway, this is just kind of how it goes. They actually made an AC called the Moonlight that's surprisingly enough using everything but the Moonlight, where it's just using a bunch of busted weapons to one-shot. You know, you can tell they had fun, although this is probably when they were feeling a little bit spicy about being laid off. so there's that. I don't actually know that they were laid off, but I know that this was the first one, I believe, that the Miyazaki technically had a hand in. Let's go ahead and switch over to the hidden first-person mode real quick. But anyway, yeah, no, I think in this one he was just like a supervisor or something like that. Any darn ways. So I think you get the general idea by this point. Obviously, there were other ones. I don't have the PS3 versions around to emulate at this point. Like, I don't have a PS3 anymore. I haven't had one for a while. But yeah, like those 4 games are really fun to play around with. but you kind of get the general idea as to why I call this thing similar to a roguelike. Or not a roguelike, but a Souls-like. Okay? That, by the way, I love this plasma rifle is basically like the Men in Black noisy cricket. Just 5 shots and then you throw it away. Anyway. But yeah, you got a lot of the same kind of stuff, minus the leveling system. And instead of, wide open areas to explore, you have little areas that you go into and just sort of interact. Sometimes you can affect the story, sometimes you don't, sometimes different stuff happens, sometimes you just kind of do it for fun. So, it's a very, very varied experience. It's a very FromSoftware experience, and it feels very good. I wouldn't recommend starting with Last Raven here. Honestly, for most folks, I would say just start with Armored Core 3. And as much as the controls might seem weird at first, just roll with it. Honestly, many folks will have different ideas on how to make the controls work. I would just say just play it like this. Why? Because, well, it's basically an RPG, and this way you're playing it like an RPG. These controls were literally designed after Kingsfield, which used the same control scheme. Now, personally, I really like the PSP control scheme. It's basically up on triangle, down on circle for your camera, because, again, you're not moving it that often. Most of the time, it's easier to orientate your entire body than it is to move your neck. But, honestly, that feels appropriate for this friggin' killbot, and for a lot of the weapon types that you have, it's honestly a lot easier to aim that way. Like, for example, with these rockets, it's good to have a specific plane, and I can vaguely be aware of where this rocket is going to go. But either way, to each their own. Again, would recommend starting with AC3, whatever way you decide to go with it. It's just generally going to be the easiest to understand and play with, and I've gone ahead and lost the worst arena opponent in this game, so that's a good sign as far as knowing where you're coming from. But anyway, yeah, hopefully this wasn't too rambling. So y'all have a good one, take care, and yeah, I can't wait. I just can't believe that AC6 got announced. What is that? What kind of year is this? This is a great year. I like this year. It's got a lot of 2s in it, which is nice. But other than that, it's got basically announcements for everything I've ever wanted getting a re-release. So it's just wonderful. And yeah, you might have noticed, again, pretty much everything in this video is stuff that I mentioned coming in looking like it was in AC6. Like we got the arm shields back. We got the pile bunkers back, which technically were back, but the big drawback on it makes me think that it's more like the AC3 versions, like the 3rd gen ones. You got the cluster bombs coming back, making their heyday there. Although they are looking more like a Verdict A weapon system, which was definitely the best version of all of that. It seemed like you got potentially Exceed orbits coming back based off what looked like a cannon firing out of the shoulder. So that would be a nice little thing there, which, technically speaking, Verdict A had a version of that, but it wasn't as good because you could just replace your inside/missile/whatever else with a self-defense system, which it was too much on one slot was the thing. Anyway, so I'm super excited to see it all come back. I can't wait to find out more about this. People have been telling me to go check out their Twitter. Apparently there's some interesting stuff happening there. I haven't had a chance to do so yet, but anyway, hope this was fun. Y'all have a good one. I will see you whenever there's more info about this too. And I suppose back to the never-ending torrent of Tactics Ogre stuff, huh? All right, later.